Hi, this is Heidi from Garden Crossings, and I am going to take you for the July garden tour through my yard. So hold on and enjoy this tour. It's in the morning. Usually I do these in the afternoon or in the evening, so we'll see what the color looks like with the morning light. So to start off this garden tour, we're going to start off in the front of the house. And like I said, it is mid-July right now, and so things are perfect coloration, I think. Typically July is my favorite time out in the garden. All my favorite things really start to bloom. So we'll start off in this corner here on the far left. That is the aqua pot, and that is planted up with some of the new varieties for 2021. And you can see that the new sweet potato vine is definitely taking over. So not many of the new varieties are actually showing through. But that's one thing that I find kind of interesting when you plant up containers. Every couple weeks they have a different look to them. And they will look totally different in the beginning of the season than what they do in the end of the season. But I think that progression is fine because it always is looking different. As we move along here, the front of the bed here is filled with the Vista Bubblegum Super Petunias, and they have really filled out. The thing I like about the bubblegum is they're just a massive color, and this front area is only 5 plants. They get watered daily, and they also get fed once a week. So that is one thing that really helps them look superb. Behind the Super Petunias, we have the, lo and behold, lilac chip butterfly bushes, and they bloom for a good portion of the summer. So that is one thing I like about the butterfly bushes, is that they're long blooming. Behind them is a aqua pot filled with sun patiens and diamond mountain, and that just gives a nice splash of color that I think looks really nice with the bubblegum Super Petunias. The yellow you're seeing are the Suncredible sunflowers. Those are new for 2020, so that was a new variety for this year. And again, lots of color, kind of a nice airy form to them. So I just really love how they mingle kind of in this spot. Behind them we have our lighted hanging baskets, and these are irrigated baskets, so they're hooked up to a drip line. So they get dripped with water every day. And then if you can notice there up in the bell, there is a light. So at night these are illuminated. So not only can you enjoy the baskets during the day, you also get to enjoy them during the evening. As we make our way to the side of the front of the house, we've got again more of the Vista Bubblegum Petunias, and behind them are 3 Bobo Hydrangeas. One thing you're going to notice as we walk through the yard, I have a lot of Bobo Hydrangeas. Typically I don't duplicate a lot of my plants, because I just like to have a lot of variety, but you will notice Bobo is duplicated. And you will also notice a little bit of size difference on the Bobo. So these are the newest ones. These are about 3 foot tall and 3 foot wide. So size will be a little bit different based off the age of the plant, but also you'll notice that they're at different bloom schedules, I guess you might say. And I think that has something to do with the amount of heat and sun that the different locations get. This is a westward facing, so it's only getting sun from like 1 until the end of the day, where a lot of the other ones in my garden are getting sun pretty much all day long. This here is a standard bloomerang lilac, bloomed earlier this spring. It needs to get trimmed because it's getting way too huge. But underneath that we have planted the Anna's Magic Ball Thuyas. That's about the only evergreen I have in my yard, and I did that because in the winter I do like to have a little bit of something that stays consistent in this area. As we head along the side of the yard, we have the Vista Snowdrift Petunias, again creating a mat of color. And behind it is the Quickfire Hydrangea. So this is, I would say, just about to its prime. There's a lot of white on it, but it's definitely headed towards its fiery coloration. We'll go in for a closer look. With a lot of the pinks and the reds. So I would say probably another week, maybe 2. This will be a lot more of that reddish pink color, but that's about an 8-foot shrub right there. As we head down the side yard, these are the Bobo Hydrangeas. And planted between the Bobos, I have Pugsters. They're not blooming quite yet, but those will be pretty once they start to bloom. And on the side of the house, I have a hardy hibiscus to the left, and then another hardy hydrangea in the middle there. That's Little Lamb. That's not blooming yet. That's going to be a later in the season bloomer. Another hardy hibiscus and a pugster there tucked between the bobos. This hardy hibiscus, I'm not sure which one it is right now because it's not blooming, but look at that nice dark foliage. I think that looks really pretty up against the white flowers of the bobo. So this area of the garden is super hard to grow because it's so dry. It's south facing. So I just had to put a couple big things in there to fill the space that I knew would do well. As we take the corner here, this is an Incrediball blush hydrangea, and it's past its peak now. But even that, when the flowers are almost done, they still look pretty from a distance, kind of a dusty pink. Got to sneak around my neighbor's tree here a minute, and we'll get a look at this garden from this direction. So again, this is a very dry area. So I have some coneflowers planted in here, some annual verbena, some Shasta daisies. And then as I go this direction, I get a little bit more water, so I can see these hostas and stuff. Planted through the arch, that is the mini Mauvet hydrangea, the pinks you're seeing in the back there. Let's take a closer look. Again, those were in their prime a couple weeks ago, but even so, I think they still look really pretty as they're headed fading. The flowers are fading. We'll back up a little bit. So this now is the back of my house, which faces the east, and tucked in this little garden here, there's kind of a smorgasbord of full sun, full shade, and part shade plants, because really this area can kind of do well with any of those varieties. Some of the things you're seeing blooming right now is back up against the house, the purple, that is the Angelonia Super Blue. That was just kind of a bare spot, so we put a whole bunch of Angelonia in there for kind of a consistent pop of color. You'll see there's some Coleus Wicked Witch, that's the burgundy with the lime green edging. And again, there was holes, so we just popped some of that in, kind of a little drift of color. Beautiful Daylily there. I think that's Red Hot Returns. One of my favorite plants in my whole garden is Alstroemeria Inca Ice. The reason I love Inca Ice is because it blooms all summer, and I've even had this plant blooming into November. Remember, we're in Michigan here, so for a plant to be blooming in November, that's pretty impressive. And this plant that's one plant. So it's gotten quite large. So I love the Inca Ice Alstroemeria. Along the back of the house, I have some shrubs. What's blooming down there is the little quickfire hydrangea. So that's kind of more of a lace cap. And that one's about 2 foot tall, maybe 2.5 foot tall. This is a fairly newly planted shrub area. On either side of the little quickfire, I have the snippet lime woodula. And that was blooming earlier. That's a spring bloomer. So those had some pink flowers on it. But the reason why I chose the snippet lime for this place is because see how the foliage is kind of a limey green? I just wanted something that popped against some of the more darker greens in this garden. And I think that snippet lime is doing a great job of that. Under the deck here, this area gets sun in the morning, but then obviously once the sun goes up, the deck is shading it. So in this area, I have a lot of hostas that you can see in here right now. There's a black-eyed Susan that's actually doing well, even though it's fairly shady. In the spring though, there is bleeding heart in here, there's a stilby in here, and there's some bernera. So in the spring, this is a little bit more flowerful than it is right now, but I like the big hostas in this area because again, it just fills in the space nicely, and don't have to worry about weeding too much because the hostas just really cover everything. We'll spin around and we'll start heading to the back. So this area here, as I've mentioned in other videos, this area had a large maple tree that fell over a few years back. So in this garden here, we did a lot of repetitive planting. Typically not my style that you'll see because I just kind of have a little bit of everything. But in this space here, it's very consistent with what we've done. So in the center there, we have the limelight hydrangea, and that's a standard, meaning it's in tree form. And it's just starting to show a little bit of color. And planted around that limelight hydrangea, we did some of the bloomerang dwarfs. This is bloomerang dwarf purple. This bloomed earlier this spring, and I can see, we'll go in closer, and there's a lot of buds on this plant, so it's going to do its rebloom. So the bloomerang lilacs are reblooming lilacs, and they will bloom. The spring is when it's got its best show of color, but it does bloom throughout the summer, just kind of with sporadic flowers, which I think is nice because most lilacs you're not going to get anything after its first spring bloom. Also in this garden, we have the My Monet Weigela, which is this variegated plant. And the reason we chose that is because the variegation of the foliage. It's lighter, it pops in color. So up against the green of the hydrangea, that Weigela I think really stands out nicely. Behind that we have the heuchera, and I believe this one is heuchera wildberry, which is that purple in there. And again, look at the Weigela up against that heuchera. The coloration just next to each other really plays nicely. The red that is throughout this garden are red sun patiens, and you'll notice there's not a lot of red in my garden as we walk around, but we had extras of these one year, so Rod planted them in this space, and I think it turned out really pretty. So we've been kind of just repeating this look for the last, I think this is the second year we've done this. And again, you'll notice there's lilacs. There's 3 lilacs in here. There's 6 of the Weigela, and then there are 3 Atlas rose. So the Atlas rose are kind of cycling right now, so there's not a lot of blooms on them. Let me head over though so I can show you one of them that is blooming. So here is the Atlas rose. It's that beautiful peach rose. And I wouldn't typically think to put peach and red together, but I think, like, look at that purple, the red, and the peach. I think it looks really pretty together. And then, of course, I added my little Corona hair don't care statue to the garden this year because I think that, you know, we can all relate with what Corona hair was this spring. All right, we're gonna head back further into the garden here, and this space here used to be where my kids' swing set and sandbox was, but obviously my kids are older now and haven't needed a swing set or sandbox for quite a few years. So we removed that out of the garden, and my daughter wanted to create a butterfly garden. So a lot of the plants that are in this space would be considered more like butterfly plants. So let's take a walk around and I'll show you some of what's going on in this garden. So up front here, the grouping of 5, that's Nepeta cat's pajamas. That has recently been trimmed back and it's starting to put on another little bit of a rebloom. So that is a plant that if it stops blooming or, you know, has a lot of spent blooms, go ahead and trim it back and you'll get more flowers. As we head around, some of the colors you're seeing are coneflower, sombrero burgundy, and then I believe the orange is the adobe orange. Again, butterfly garden, hummingbird garden. This is salvia rockin fuchsia. We tucked a little sun patient in there that we had left, and I don't know, I like that bright splash of color. Behind the little dragonfly statue, that is all opening, or not opening act, but that's all a phlox that's done blooming. So that will get trimmed back to reveal the hibiscus that's planted in the middle there. Sometimes I plant things on top of each other knowing when one thing is done, another thing is going to start. So I kind of stack it just because I get greedy in the garden and I don't have all the space. So I'll plant something that blooms early with something that blooms later. That way I can have color more longer in the season in that same spot. Every butterfly garden needs Asclepias, and here we have Asclepias Cinderella. Cinderella is the pink blooming Asclepias, and we've had a lot of butterflies and caterpillars on this plant this year. I'm not looking too hard, but I'm wondering if I would see one here in the video. Probably not, because you never find things when you're hoping to. But you need to have milkweed if you have a butterfly garden, because this is a plant that is the host for the monarch butterflies. Another thing is, if you want to attract like swallowtails and stuff, a lot of the different herbs like dill and parsley, that would help attract swallowtails. So next year I'm going to be adding some of those additions into the garden as well. The big hydrangea you're seeing there is Quickfire. So all the pictures you see of Quickfire show this brilliant bright red hydrangea, and I get a lot of questions when their Quickfires start blooming. people are telling me, no, that's not quickfire, it's white. Quickfire is red. Well, to get red, quickfire has to, or I'm saying quickfire, that's not even it. Scratch the quickfire. This is firelight. Firelight hydrangea. So firelight, all the pictures are red that you see in advertisements, and it does turn red. But before it turns red, it has to start off as white. So it's got beautiful large white blooms, and then over the next month, month and a half, these blooms are going to start turning kind of a lighter pink, and then a darker pink, and then a fiery red. So firelight is a stunning shrub. It shows its best color later on in the season, but again, it's got to be white before it can be red. We'll take the corner here. Under this firelight, I have some sedum planted, and that just gives me some fall color because I don't have a ton of fall color in this particular garden. That phlox you're seeing, that is Glamour Girl, and I think Glamour Girl is one of the most pretty color phloxes I have in my garden. And when this is done blooming, it'll cycle and it will do another rebloom. So I usually get 2 cycles of blooms off of this phlox Glamour Girl. And I think that looks really pretty planted up against that firelight hydrangea. So even when firelight turns red, it's a great color combination. Next to it is the Sonic Bloom Pink Weigela, and this is a reblooming Weigela. So in the spring, this was just full of color, and I can see right now it's starting to cycle through to get another round of blooms. You can see there's some blooms going on. So again, this plant pretty much has some flowers on it throughout the full summer. The first round is a full coverage of blooms, but again, to have any flowers throughout the summer on a Weigela is a bonus over a lot of the other older type varieties. In the corners of the garden, I have coneflowers planted. They're kind of in a little fenced-in enclosure, and I do that because I have rabbits. Rabbits typically aren't too big of a problem, but at some point they were, and they were mowing these things down before I even got to see them bloom. Now they're finding other interest in other things, so I'm not having to worry about what they're going to do with my coneflowers. But as you notice in this little batch here, I just took a whole bunch of different colors and planted it in, and this has got a pretty good assortment of colors going on. My other one we're going to see is mostly pink now. But I love to take coneflowers, take all the varieties I can, and just mix them all together. I just love the coloration there. So as we walk through the path, you'll also notice that this whole garden has been lined with white sun patiens. And the reason I do that is because in the night, or you know, in the evening, white really glows. And so by putting white on the border of this garden, it just really makes this garden pop and glow. I'm going to show you Viva Polonia Clematis. This is pretty much done blooming now, but there's a few flowers left. I really love that magenta with the white eye. Viva Polonia is I have a lot of favorite clematis, so I guess to say one of my favorite, probably one of my top 10. That might be a better way of saying it. Also tucked in this side of the butterfly garden, there's some more salvia in there. There's some veronica, and then more of the Suncredible sunflowers. Oh, you are noticing my one project that has been sitting here for the past month. I've got to get these caladiums planted, but I keep forgetting to bring dirt home. So for now, they're just sitting on top of that pot. So don't look closely at what I haven't done yet. And in this area here, this has got a lot of annuals poked in it, and I'm going to start poking some more perennials in. So this was an area that, I don't know, perennials kind of die after a while. In this area, that's what happened. So I put a phlox in, and then I did put some Asclepias tuberosa. So I have 3 new plantings of Asclepias tuberosa. They're not showing yet because there's just small plants, but I wanted to get more milkweed in this garden because, again, hummingbirds, butterflies, but primarily the butterflies, they need that Asclepias to have the monarchs in the garden. So the 2 plants you're seeing here, the big white hydrangeas, those are bobo, and yes, they are big bobos. These bobos are almost 4 foot tall. And I don't know if they just love this spot or what, but I have noticed that originally Bobo was said to get about 2 foot tall and 2 foot wide. But in my experience, in my full sun areas, Bobo is definitely getting to be about more the 4 foot height. So keep in mind, if you're planting bobo, you can keep it trimmed back. So if you want to keep it short, you can trim it and keep it short. But if you let it go, it's going to get tall, like 4 foot tall in your garden spaces. Between the bobo, I have the Miss Molly butterfly bush. So in Michigan, butterfly bushes die back to the ground, and that was the case with this one. So it had to kind of come all the way back from the ground. So it's just starting to bloom now, but I just love the color of Miss Molly, a beautiful fuchsia pink. All right, we're going to take a walk back to the back border of the garden now and see what's going on here. So I don't have a lot of shade in my garden. So from other videos you've seen, this is my shade garden. And in the shade garden, it's packed full of hostas. So you'll notice there's all different kind of colors and textures and heights going on with these hostas. And I think personally, that's the best way to plant hostas, is by mixing all different kinds together, because I think that helps them kind of play off of one another, and it really makes them pop when you're planting something that's green against something that's blue, that's something that's variegated. So in this area, we've taken a lot of different hostas and popped them in there to kind of play off of each other. I did put a couple caladium up front because I wanted to break up the green and yellow a little bit. So you'll notice we are going to start heading into a little bit of caladium for pops of color as well. As we take the corner here, this gets a little bit more sun, so you'll notice that the landscape changes a little bit with what's in it. So now we're introducing some astilbe, bleeding heart, let's see what else, more caladium, because I wanted to bring in some more color into this area. We do have the Incrediball, I believe that one is an Invincible Spirit, actually, Invincible Spirit hydrangea in there. This is kind of a tricky area in my garden. Like, things grow here, but you can tell there's not a lot of variety. So I got to figure out how to add some more stuff into this space that gives me more color, because it's pretty green. And by green, I'm talking foliage color. There's a lot of foliage color, but not a lot of plant color. So I got to figure out what to put here to get a little bit more color going on. There is an alstroemeria, that's the pink in front of us. So I could plant more of those. It's just that those sometimes aren't the most hardiest plant here in Michigan, but that again, it's long blooming, so that's a consistent amount of color. There's astilbes in the back there. There's some coleus. I believe that is Sedona Sunset, or it might be Wicked Hot. I'll have to double check and let you know for sure. But again, there's some ferns. The big hosta in the back there, that's Empress Wu. That is a huge hosta. In this area, we are starting to introduce now some roses that have cycled through and got buds. There's also more bobo hydrangeas, but you can tell these bobo are really small. These ones are only 2 foot tall. So it just kind of depends on the location as to how tall your hydrangeas might get. In the back there, we've got some more coleus poked in just for some color. Another nice size hosta. So this area, I need to plant more things. If you've got suggestions, I'd love to hear what you think I should plant in this area. Just leave it in the comment below. We put some impatiens in. They're just kind of filling in the spot, but they don't look super great. And as we take the corner, you can tell we're getting into a more sunnier garden here, because again, you'll notice the plants have kind of changed. So this here is Allium Serendipity. It's just starting to kind of put on a little bit of color. So another couple weeks, that will be bright purple balls. Behind it there is the Happy Jack Clematis, and this was in its prime about 2 weeks ago. A little bit smaller flowers, but this whole trellis was just loaded with color 2 weeks ago. You'll notice more coleus have been popped in, along with some polka dot plants and those beautiful hydrangeas. We're going to talk back about them in a minute, but I'm going to flip and show you kind of the full back of the garden. So you'll notice they are lined also with sun patiens. This is, I believe it's sun patien blush. And we used to put petunias along the edge here, but because of the amount of shade it gets, it wasn't very consistent looking. So we've tried the sun pations now, and now we're getting a more consistent border where the color is, it's more full, and I think just looks nicer. All right, so back to the hydrangeas. So this is the Incrediball blush hydrangea. There's actually 3 of them here. Those 2 are big and beautiful. And next to it, you'll notice there's just like 2 flowers, and that one is not so big and beautiful. The reason why that is because it's planted so close to that tree. And I think that that tree is taking like all the nutrients out. And so therefore it's not giving that hydrangea enough nutrients, where the ones that are planted out just a little bit further are getting more nutrients and are doing better. So that's my only thought on why that one isn't doing as well. This here is my daylily garden. So we just plunked a whole bunch of daylilies in here, and a lot of different colors, pretty much the same height. Most of these are not reblooming, so when this area is finished flowering, it's back to kind of a green grassy look. But when it is flowering, I love all the different colorations that I have here with these daylilies. In the back here we have like a waterfall pond that we don't turn on so much anymore, just because it is really gross and it gets really gross. So we just are using it for just a dry pond, I guess, except for where the water sits. And you can see like how disgusting that is. So none of us want to get in there and clean it out. So we just leave it like this. And I think it looks fine. So tucked in back at the top of the waterfall pond area are hostas and ferns. There's a couple cone flowers in there for color, and those I can see from a distance. So I should plant more in. But I think those cone flowers actually are getting kind of snuffed out, because there's Amsonia planted up in the front of those cone flowers, and that was one Amsonia plant that is now covering about a 5 by 5 square, so it's definitely taking over. The yellow grass you're seeing up in the front is Hydrangea all gold, and that's a wonderful grass too if you're looking to add some like yellow into the garden. That one is really pretty. We do have this area lined with more sun pations. So this is the sun pations purple in this area, and I wanted to just kind of break it up a little bit from the blush and turn it into purple, just to kind of create like another, let's call it, room in the garden. So this little area is planted with the sun pation purple. Tucked back in here, this will be blooming more in August. There's a lot of Rebecca in here, but you do see there are some phlox blooming. That's Glamour Girl. There's also a hibiscus, and this hibiscus looks terrible because the Japanese beetles have just destroyed it. So it will still flower, but the foliage is absolutely ugly. There's a lot of dragonflies in the garden. I don't know if you've been noticing them at all or not, but I'm going to try to get this one here. Really pretty. It's black and it's iridescent. Let's go in here. Iridescent blue. So we have a creek in the back of the garden, and so therefore there's a lot of dragonflies in this area. There's another one. So the hydrangea we're looking at now is the Incrediball hydrangea, and this is one plant, and it's probably about 8 foot wide and about 4 to 5 foot tall. So again, it can get trimmed back in the fall or in the spring because it blooms off of the new growth, but we just let it go because I think it fills out that spot nicely. Here we have another Bobo hydrangea, and this one is probably more 3.5 to 4 foot tall. It's a newer planting, so it's not as big as the ones that were out in my butterfly garden, but I think it's going to get bigger as it goes. This is a beautiful Invincible Spirit hydrangea. That one was trimmed back this spring, and so it's coming back now. So it's a church in the background, so it's kind of quiet here. Neighbor on one side of the church, and then not many neighbors in the back because that creek really muffles them. So let me just go ahead and show you kind of from where I'm standing now what the garden space looks like. So that's kind of where we've been so far. So this area here that we're looking at now, the pink you're seeing is the pink mink Clematis, and that is amazing. So that is one plant, and that is a ton of flowers on that one plant. So if you're looking for a clematis that does like a really good job of coloring up and filling in a lot of space, pink make. Small flowers, but lots of them. On that trellis kind of there behind the pink hydrangea, there is Ragucci and Princess Diana, so it's kind of a pink and purple mix. And again, these aren't your typical looking clematis, because clematis are usually like a bigger flower. These are both kind of a different flower form. This grouping here is Allium Millennium, so it's just starting to show a little hue of color. So that will be pretty in probably another week or two, where it will be more of a purple mass of color. As we make our way through here, this area here had a lot of spring color with the spirea and the baptisia. But we've got some daylilies in this area. This here actually is a proudberry bush, which is kind of like a not so known shrub, but it's starting to put its little flowers and it's creating its berries. So in the fall, this is going to have just a ton of pink berries on it. So if you're looking for something different and unique, check out the proudberry. I've got pictures online of it when it's in its full glory or looking really beautiful. Primal Scream Daylily with another hardy hibiscus behind it. Again, I love the dark foliage hibiscus, how they just really pop against the greens and the different colors in the garden. This area here isn't doing as what I was hoping. So I have the Mojave portulacas or moss roses planted in the front with the lemon coral sedum behind. And a few years ago, the Mojaves did wonderful. Like they were always in color, bright pink blooms. But this year, I don't know, I think maybe we water them too much because they really haven't given me a really great show of color. So I keep trying this because the one year it was beautiful, but this year it's just not doing nothing. So I think I'm going to rethink this plan for next year and not do that. The plant that you're looking that looks kind of airy with yellow flowers, that's a popcorn plant. They both are there actually, and it smells like buttered popcorn. So if you are somebody that's looking for something fun to put to the garden, consider the popcorn plant. It's great if you have kids or grandkids because it's just a touch and feel plant. This here is my wall of clematis, and again, you'll notice a lot of these clematis are not your typical flower form. We've got, I believe this one is Montana Maline. There's some Candida on here along with Ragucci. So this actually is almost on its way out for color. It's been at its prime for about the past month. But again, a lot of those smaller flowering clematises are pretty aggressive. And you can see there's, let's see here, there's Ragucci, Montana Maline, Princess Diana, and Haldine. That's 4 plants on this trellis, and it's full. I'm gonna have to double check that Montana Maline. I'm not sure if that's what it is, so I'll have somebody pop up what it actually is if that's not what it is. So this area of the garden here is kind of needs a little work done. We're gonna rip out all that coreopsis. We'll probably leave the wine and roses with Gila. But this area in here is gonna all get ripped out eventually. There's a sedum there, which is doing pretty good, so we might leave that. But you can just see it's kind of a neglected looking part of the garden. This area here we had done Roundup in because there was a bunch of weed that just was terrible and we couldn't get rid of it. So it sat open as just dirt for probably the past 2-3 years. We had a bunch of annuals left, so we went ahead and planted it up. Like I said, annuals left. Not a lot of great color here, but at least it's not dirt. So next year this will be replanted and hopefully we'll have more of a garden look to it. There is one staple plant that I did plant this spring, and it's a Pieris. So this is a shrub. I think this will get about 4 foot tall, but I was really impressed with this. Interstella is the name of it. I was impressed with this when it was in the greenhouse blooming, so I'm like, I gotta have one of those in the garden. So it's not doing much right now, but this is gonna be more of a, I believe it's a early spring bloomer. It's hard to tell because when things bloom in the greenhouse, you get a little bit skewed as to when they really bloom. I'll show you around the pool. So around the pool, we've done the crescent planters, and they've actually done pretty good this year. This particular one here has elephant ears with red sun patiens and diamond mountain. And these planters, they get watered once a week and they're self-watering. So, which is nice out here because I don't want to drag a hose out here every day. And this planter here, it's got palm tree, and then we've got just an assortment of different petunias, or supertunias, super bells, and super bina. Kind of a red, purple, and yellow theme going on here. This next one, I believe this is actually matching. So this has the same type of flowers in it. The reds, the purples, a little bit of yellow. And again, this one's doing quite well also. And because we were at the end of the season when we were planting these up, I didn't have a lot of selection left for myself. So I took 3 hanging baskets and just shoved it in that container, and voila, instant color. These are big planters, so that's how we could fit 3 hanging baskets in. This planter here has the Supertunia red. It's got polka dot plant, yellow super bells, and then the Angelonia purple. So this is angel face purple. So this is about the only area besides that area where the tree fell down that has red. But I thought, because I like the red over there by where the tree fell down, I wanted to carry a little bit more red out into the garden here as well. All right, so we're gonna head up to the back of the house, and this will be getting the near of this garden tour, so I appreciate you hanging on. I get a lot of good comments that you guys like these garden tours, so that's why I wanted to get out in the garden and do another tour for you. So this area here is kind of east facing, northeast, but it does get a lot of sun. So up against the house there is the wee white hydrangeas. We planted some lantana in front of them. And then in this little area here, I had lost some corabels, so we just kind of loaded it up with what we had left. So there's some Tuscan gold off to the left. That's a Heliopsis. These 2 yellows here are Tuscan sun. And then the annuals we planted in this area is the lemon coral sedum, polka dot plant. There's it's hippo white and hippo rose. And it looks like there is a nepeta in there. So there was 3 nepeta, but they didn't like this area, so we'll have to replant. We have some purposeful replanting that needs to get done where things have died off, and we just poked it with annuals to fill it in. So this area here is, I don't know, I kind of like this area, and I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe it's because it's got a lot of my favorite flowers in it. But up here on this upper ledge, there's a lot of cone flowers. There's Atlas roses. You can see there's Vista Paradise and Vista Snowdrift. There's Clematis there. There's a little pink mink starting to bloom. So that's just starting to bloom in that spot. So I'm not sure if it's because it doesn't get as much sun, but that one is just starting. A few daylilies in there, and the daylilies I chose are the rebloomers. So that way there's some constant color from the daylilies. And then we put some of the Cleome Senorita Rosalita. That's the pink you're seeing, just to give a little bit of height in this area. And then let's see here, Picasso in purple, Supertunias with the lemon coral sedum. So this whole bed is lined in lemon coral sedum. And I think that yellow just kind of gives a nice pop, kind of draws your eye to this area. Up in the front part of this bed there's the daylilies, the reblooming daylilies. There's Amsonia that blooms in the spring, so that's where my spring color comes in. And then in the back there, that is the mini mauvette hydrangea. And if I had to choose of the pink hydrangeas, my favorite pink smooth hydrangea, I think it would be the mini mauvette. I like the size of it, I like the color of it, and I think it just, it can play a great role in the garden, like just about anywhere. So mini mauvette is that particular one you're seeing there. You'll also notice there's a few black-eyed Susan that have blown in from underneath the deck. And I think that yellow is kind of, I like the yellow. It really plays nicely in this garden. Even though that wasn't a purposeful planting, I think it definitely is something that should stay there. Sometimes when we have plants that kind of go rogue and end up in weird places, we'll pull them out. But a lot of times when that happens, I find that it's like God knew that that space needed that color. I don't know. So I think that space needed that yellow. I mean, let's look at it from here. It just breaks the garden up a little bit and adds a nice little splash of color. So we'll step back so you can see this garden in its fullness. This is along the back of the house, and I hope that you've enjoyed this garden tour today. And if you want to see more garden tours like this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you get notified when I post a new video. A lot of the videos I do are just quick little 1 minutes on a specific plant, but I do occasionally do some more of these garden tours either here at my house or in the greenhouse. And I think it's fun just to see different times of year, what's blooming and how things look. So if that's something that you also like to see, what's blooming and how it looks, be sure to make sure you subscribe. So we're going to end here. This is a Tough Stuff hydrangea, and this is a mountain hydrangea. And just look at these beautiful flowers. This is Heidi from Garden Crossings.